Hello and welcome to the Friday football show on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for joining me as we sit here at week 4 of the college football season and week 3 of the NFL season. The two Pittsburgh teams have gone in somewhat different directions following early season setbacks for both squads. I called last week a potential redemption week for both teams. And while the Pittsburgh Panthers took advantage of it by beating Georgia Tech over at Heinz Field, the early year troubles have continued and maybe even worsened for the Pittsburgh Steelers after an embarrassing loss to the Kansas City Chiefs at home. And then basically every off the field distraction one could even think of coming into play this week, from Ben Roethlisberger's potential involvement in Stormy Daniels' new book to Antonio Brown tweeting, go ahead and trade me, in response to criticism from a former team employee not showing up for work on Monday. And to be honest, not sounding all that remorseful about it when he spoke with the Pittsburgh media on Thursday. There's been a circus, as Pittsburgh Post-Gazette beat reporter Ed Bouchette called it, around the team. And, I want to get into that just a little bit because I feel like you almost can't pass by that as you're talking about the Steelers right now. But I don't think it's the big thing that's happening with the team either. Antonio Brown is not the reason they gave up 42 points to the Chiefs. Neither is Ben Roethlisberger. In fact, both of those players had pretty good games, and I think most thought that they would have good seasons, and they probably will continue to have good seasons. It's not a particularly good Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense the Steelers are going to face this Monday night. And in addition to that, it has a few injuries in the secondary that seem to have it ripe for Ben and AB to take advantage of. And so, those guys aren't the problem. They aren't the reason the team is 0-1-1. And I think just so much of what happens in and around a pro sports team changes from a win to a loss. Antonio Brown talked yesterday about being frustrated that the team is losing. And so, yeah, maybe he's mad that he's not getting his catches. And maybe he's mad that he didn't get any red zone looks. But those things don't come to the surface when winning is involved. They only come to the surface when the team isn't happy with the way things are going in general. Receivers are going to lobby for their catches. Receivers are going to be upset when other teams get the ball, especially all-pro receivers. The term diva wide receiver was invented for a reason. It exists. It's a thing. They want the ball. They care about getting the ball. Sometimes they seem to care about getting the ball more than the team's offense being successful. But Antonio Brown has been a very good receiver for the Steelers for a very long time, and none of that has really come to the forefront. He's done some immature things, Facebook Live video, jawing back and forth with reporters all summer. I'm not saying he's a model citizen, but he's never had that kind of reaction in a game or in the aftermath of a game to this point in his career. The reason is simple. The Steelers are 0-1-1. They tied the Browns. They lost to an AFC team at home, and things are bad right now. Things are bad with the team right now, and that's why that kind of thing comes out. And so, I wrote on Twitter earlier this week that I understand that everything Antonio Brown says is important and worth talking about, but talking about Antonio Brown this week is sort of missing the point, because the reason the Steelers lost to the Chiefs is because their pass defense was terrible. And Patrick Mahomes made them look awful. And if they don't fix that, they're going to lose to every team they play. Antonio Brown is not the issue. And I think, to me, that's a problem, but it's also a problem that's able to be fixed. I think, when you're dealing with star athletes and personality conflicts and things of that nature, those are tricky problems that don't always get solved. If a team is losing because the players aren't getting along with each other, or the players aren't getting along with the coaching staff, or the players don't have respect for the coaching staff, or things of that nature, those problems are tough to fix. They're tough to fix from week to week. They're tough to fix without making some changes, right? That's why teams trade problem athletes. That's why coaches get fired because they don't get along with their star players, right? I mean, those are big problems. The defense just randomly leaving guys wide open, that's a problem that the football team, as it's currently assembled, can at least attempt to get over and get by. And, defensive coordinator Keith Butler had some thoughts this week about what exactly went wrong and what they can do. I mean, part of the problem was just these guys. I showed them to you last week. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are really good at exploiting matchup problems in defenses. Travis Kelce was wide open, I think, half the day, and that's exactly what they did. They also took advantage of the fact that the Steelers defense was without Joe Haden, who's their best cornerback, maybe the best player of the entire secondary, and got Sammy Watkins open a good bit. I mean, there's things that can be fixed there. There was also just badly missed coverages. Here's a Butler quote from yesterday. You saw a guy go down the middle. There was a lack of communication on the field. We have to do a better job of that. And when someone said that didn't happen against Cleveland, he said, well, yeah, that's a better offense. Kansas City's a better offense than Cleveland's is. Where does Tampa Bay fall on that scale? Well, I think probably somewhere in the middle. They've scored a lot of points. They're 2-0. They've beaten good teams. They won at New Orleans, which is always a hard place to play. And they beat the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They've scored a lot of points doing it. It looks like a pretty good Tampa Bay offense. But the matchup is not as big of a problem. So I took that Chiefs graphic and went ahead and updated it for this week. Here are the guys to be worried about on Tampa Bay. 11 Jackson, 13 Evans. I'm sure if you play fantasy football, you're familiar with these guys. Big time, big play wide receivers. But that's what they are. They're wide receivers. These are not guys that are going to line up in the backfield, line up in the slot, line up as a blocker, and use misdirection to create mismatches. These are just guys that run down the field and beat you. That's hard to cover. But with Joe Haden full participate in practice this week, I think the Steelers are better at covering these kind of players than they are a Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. If you look back at their games against the Cincinnati Bengals over the years, A.J. Green has gotten his catches. He's had his share of impact, but not to the same level that you see him have week in and week out in the NFL. They've been able to defend against that kind of player. And actually, I think that's a pretty apt example because Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton, those aren't all-world quarterbacks they're going against either. Not particularly mobile guys. They don't do anything with their legs that has to make a defense worry. They aren't particularly escapable from the pocket. So if a team does want to blitz, they feel like they can do that and not get burnt. So yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a Tampa Bay offense that is not as able to exploit what's wrong with the Steelers defense, which is inexperience at safety and just lack of elite speed and coverability at inside linebacker, and also experience in the scheme. Outside of Vince Williams, none of the other guys back there have really done this for any length of time. So I think this is a game that if the Steelers offense played like it did last week and the defense just corrects some of those communication errors that Keith Butler talked about, gets Joe Haden back, and just plays up against a team that they match up better against, I think this is a game the Steelers should win. Even though I think around town, if I walk down there in Market Square right now, I don't think very many people are feeling really good about the team right now. Vegas line, Steelers on the road, 1.5-point favorites. And I think I agree. I actually think they could do even better than that. I think this is a team that has not played to its capability yet to this point in the season. And I think it's all out there. It all lines up for them to be able to do that this week. While I'm talking about the line, I said I'm going to do this every week, talk about what I got wrong, what I got right. Last week, more good than bad, actually. I did think the Chiefs were a tough matchup for the Steelers, and it turned out to be. And I did think that Pitt would be able to get back in the win column after that terrible loss against Penn State, against the option attack of Georgia Tech, and kind of turn the page and move on at home. Pitt did that, and now they've got another challenge, and they've got to play North Carolina at North Carolina this Saturday. I'll be going down there for Pittsburgh Sports Now, 12:20 kickoff tomorrow, and Pitt's 0-5 against North Carolina, in the ACC era between those two teams over the last 5 seasons, 0-3 under Pat Narduzzi, and all of the games have been relatively close. There doesn't seem to be a common thread other than Pitt loses. There's been, there's been kickoff returns, punt returns, trick plays, last-minute drives, poor tackling, lack of coverage ability, inept offense. Pitt's lost every way you can lose to North Carolina, some of them 3 and 4 times. And interesting thing came out yesterday that Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi feels that over the last couple of years, North Carolina had some of Pitt's signals down. He didn't go into detail about whether that was offense or defense or what exactly they were able to, what kind of advantage they were able to glean from that. But when you lose 5 games by a combined 22 points, that advantage seems like it would loom fairly large in games that close. He's obviously not too happy about it. I'd like to point out that he famously stole Penn State's snap cadence 2 years ago and used it against them at Heinz Field. So, turnabout's fair play, I assume, Pat. But that's it makes this matchup a little bit more interesting, right? Because now we get to go see the Panthers, assuming what they could do if North Carolina doesn't know what they're trying to do. And again, I think this is a game that Pitt feels like they should be able to win. It needs to feel like they should be able to win. This is not a particularly good North Carolina team in general, and they're missing 9 players, including their potential starting quarterback in Chaz Surratt, a couple, an all-ACC type defensive end, a few other rotation players on the defensive line and in the secondary and at wide receiver. And, this is a game that Pitt should be winning. The thing that should keep Pat Narduzzi up at night, now that I'm assuming he's confident he's fixed whatever caused North Carolina to be able to gain an advantage by figuring out Pitt's signals, is Anthony Ratliff-Williams, the wide receiver, had a huge game against the Panthers last year. It's honestly, it's hard to believe. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown, and as you can see here, he's just a big guy. He's a strong guy, breaking a few tackles, but he's also incredibly fast. If you watch here, number 2, Maurice French, one of the fastest guys on Pitt's team, can't keep up with him. That's a big matchup problem. Here he is against Jordan Whitehead, who, by the way, is going to start for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday, or at least it seems like he might. And, Whitehead kind of makes a poor play there, but still not able to come up with it. And then here he is again in the red zone, gets a rub, gets against a linebacker, and he's wide open. He's a big, strong guy. As you see, 6'1", 201, goes up to get the ball. And Felipe Motley is probably the fastest of Pitt's defensive backs. He's going to draw the matchup in what I've sort of highlighted as the top matchup in that game to me. I think Ratliff-Williams is a player that if left sort of unchecked or undefended, he has the ability to really, really turn a game, because those plays – he also threw a touchdown pass on a trick play last year, and those are the kind of plays that really change the dynamic of a game. A team can be winning, a team can be playing well, and you give up a kickoff return, you give up a trick play, you just give up one long pass play out of nowhere, and those are the kind of plays that lead to those narrow victories that North Carolina has had over Pitt. And so I think Motley and whoever else has to cover Ratliff-Williams, because as you're going to hear, I spoke with Dennis Briggs and Motley about it. That Briggs is Pitt's starting strong safety. Motley starts on corner on the other side, the field side. They're both worried about Ratliff-Williams because North Carolina moves him around. You saw in that clip from last year, they use a rub to get him onto the safety, to get him onto a linebacker. They will move him around. And here's Briggs and Motley on just sort of the challenge that Ratliff-Williams is going to present to them this week.
When it comes to 17, he had a big game against you guys last year. What do they do to try to hide him or get him open? How do they use his talents?
They put him all over the field. I mean, he's their utility guy. So, a lot of receivers kind of stay, like some receivers stay on the field side. Some receivers stay on the boundary side. They'll put them to the boundary. They'll put them to the field. Give them toss. They do whatever they can to get the ball in his hands.
How big of a challenge is he, I guess, compared to some of the other guys you faced over the years?
He's a great player. He's definitely their go-to guy. So we definitely have some stuff that we want to do to make sure that we get him covered up. He certainly stands out on the field, so we'll be prepared.
I remember he's really fast. He goes after the ball, and they like to get the ball to him. So he's a very good receiver. I remember that, like I said, he was really fast. He has really good speed. So we're gonna have to really have good fundamentals at the line. Try to get good hands on him. Try to slow him down a little bit, but it's gonna be a challenge, and I think we're ready for that challenge.
So as you heard, it's going to be a challenge. They admit that. They know that. But I think this is a challenge Pitt is poised to win. I mean, they don't have a player like Jordan Whitehead that they did last year, but I feel like Pitt's cornerbacks are in the best position they've been probably since Pat Narduzzi has been at Pitt to take on this kind of matchup. Motley is probably the fastest player on the defense, at least, maybe the fastest player on the team. He has the speed to run with the Ratliff-Williams. I think the place that maybe you get concerned is if it's Briggs or if it's DeMar Hamlin. If they're able to get those mismatches, get him against the safety, that's tough. But again, Vegas line, Pitt -3, and I think that sounds about right to me. I think the Panthers should be able to win. I do expect it to be another close game. It doesn't seem like there are ever any blowouts in the ACC, very rare anyway. And yeah, that's I see another close win for Pitt, but Ratliff-Williams is the guy they've got to stop. If they can do that, on the other side of the ball, I think Pitt's offense is ready to break out. I really do. Quadri Allison has been so good in the running game. When you break down that running film, it's dangerous. It's explosive. It's not just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He can get big chunks of yardage, and teams are going to have to respect that. And if they do, then the deep play is going to open up. You saw Kenny Pickett hit Taysir Mack on a flea flicker for 60-some yards last week. He had another one open where he couldn't quite get the ball to Tyler Sear. Those are going to be the plays where Pitt can have those chunk plays, those big burst plays that really move things in the other direction for them. And I expect them to be able to do that. And if they can go 2-0 to start the season, then, of course, they've got Central Florida in a non-conference game and a big game against Syracuse ahead on October 6th. But I think you'd have to feel pretty good if you're a Pitt fan about starting the season 3-1, 2-0 in conference play. Yes, the Penn State game did not go the way that the team or the fan base wanted it to. But if Pitt can go down and take care of business against North Carolina, I think it's hard to feel too bad about where they are at this point in the season. And I expect that to happen. So stay tuned for my coverage down from North Carolina. I'll be there all day tomorrow. And also tonight, we've got Steve Brenner with a big high school football matchup. Aliquippa at Beaver Falls, a pair of 4-0 teams. Big rivalry. The Tigers haven't beat the Quips in a regular season game since 2009. Nick Nardone, second-year coach. Mike Warfield, first-year coach. Kind of some new blood in there, expecting big things. Also, probably a half a dozen Division I guys on Aliquippa, including MJ Devonshire, cornerback, one of the top players in all of WPIAL, and a big Pitt target. The interesting matchup there will be whether or not Beaver Falls will punt to him. He's returned every punt he's gotten this year for a touchdown, and I don't know if I would. He's a dangerous player, and they're sort of keeping on theme. There's the kind of big play, big chunk play that can flip a game. Although the Quips haven't needed that, they've given up a total of 6 points over 4 games. Going to be tough for Beaver Falls to get that first win. Backup quarterback in for them as well. Check out all Steve's coverage at Pittsburgh Sports now. There's a preview. There's a feature on Warfield and the things he's done to install a new culture off the field at Aliquippa in addition to winning those 4 games. Really great stuff from Steve over at Pittsburgh Sports now. And that's it. That's the coverage plan for us for this weekend. Dukes are out at Hawaii. I'll preview that a little later on this afternoon at Pittsburgh Sports now, and then we'll have some wrap-up coverage from that on Sunday. Midnight kick for the Dukes and the Warriors. So stay up late for that one. And then, of course, Steelers are going Monday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's it for us this week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please, if you like the show, if you want to hear from us, if you got something to add, leave a comment right below here. Pittsburgh Sports Live on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out a lot. We appreciate it if you can do that. And also, you get to see all the other great shows from Mike Asti, Dan Kingarski, and we're looking to add some more, too. I want to keep things growing and keep things moving forward. So thanks again for listening. Till next week, I'm Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh Sports Live, and we'll see you next week.